Welcome to Storyflix. In this video, I will explain Little Shop of Horrors. This horror movie is about a shop assistant who discovers an unusual plant. He then found out that the plant feeds only on human flesh and blood. What kind of disaster will this man-eating plant cause? Let's find out on Little Shop of Horrors. Little Shop of Horrors begins by showing an employee at a flower shop named Seymour. At the plant shop, there was another employee named Audrey and the owner named Mr. Mushnick. In contrast to him, Audrey was cared for by Mr. Mushnick, while Seymour was always scolded for doing a lot of recklessness. In addition, Mr. Mushnick often looks angry because his flower shop has been empty of customers for months. Finally, Mr. Mushnick had lost his temper and decided to close his shop. Then Audrey remembered that Seymour had found a strange plant behind the shop. She also had the idea to display the strange plant to attract customers. Mr. Mushnick himself wasn't sure the strange plant would bring in customers. The plant looks terrible. Seymour later named the plant Audrey too. But unexpectedly, visitors began to enter the shop and intend to buy Audrey too. They even seemed to be fighting with each other. But Mr. Mushnick didn't sell the plant and just made it an attraction. And sure enough, now people started coming to buy flowers at the shop because they were interested in seeing Audrey too. The plants in Mr. Mushnick's shop were also sold out, and it made him very happy. He decided to take the two of his employees to dinner. Unfortunately, Audrey had to refuse the invitation because she would have dinner alone with her boyfriend. According to Mr. Mushnick, Audrey should have dumped her boyfriend because she was a frequent victim of violence. Finally, Mr. Mushnick decided to cancel their dinner, and Seymour was asked to take care of Audrey too. When taken to the basement, Seymour was confused because the plant suddenly withered, even though he had taken very good care of it all day. While he was packing some things, Seymour's finger was cut and bleeding. It was then that Seymour realized that Audrey too had suddenly moved, as if sending a code for him to feed it. It turns out that Audrey too asked Seymour to feed it his blood. When Seymour gave it a finger that wasn't bleeding, Audrey too seemed to refuse and only wanted the finger that was still bleeding. Finally, Seymour was dripping blood from his finger. It is seen Audrey too devour his blood so voraciously. Amazingly, Audrey too's size looks instantly enlarged, even though it's only eaten a few drops of Seymour's blood. Now the body of the plant is getting bigger and is becoming very famous in the community. Seymour was invited to the radio station to share stories about his plant. But it turns out that Audrey too's size is getting bigger because Seymour always gives it fresh blood almost every time. Now the size is even the size of an adult. The uniqueness of Audrey too makes more and more visitors come to Mr. Mushnick's shop to see the plant. Meanwhile, Mr. Mushnick seemed completely unconcerned about the condition of Seymour's body, which always looked weak from lack of blood. That's when Audrey asked Seymour to go out to dinner together after work. The invitation pleased Seymour. The scene then changed to a dental clinic. There's a dentist named Oren who is Audrey's boyfriend. However, unlike other dentists, Oren is seen as a terrible dentist. He is very rude in taking care of his patients' teeth and made them traumatized to have their teeth checked. That evening, Seymour and Audrey were ready to leave. But suddenly, Oren came to Mr. Mushnick's flower shop. It turned out that all this time, Seymour had lived alone in Mr. Mushnick's shop. It was then that Seymour could see how Oren had mistreated Audrey. Audrey is forced to be taken away by Oren, and their dinner plans are cancelled. In the end, Seymour could only go back into the shop and talk to Audrey too. There was no other entertainment for him than the strange plant. But strangely, Audrey too suddenly withered again. Seymour approached it and was so surprised when he realized that Audrey too could talk. The plant asked him to feed it because it was starving. Seymour was pulled by Audrey too and is forced to feed it. Seymour is confused because he has no food. Suddenly, he saw Oren, who passed in front of his shop. On the other hand, Audrey seemed to be walking alone, as if Oren had just left her in the middle of the road. Seymour, who saw Oren's treatment to Audrey, became very angry and decided to kill him. The next day, Seymour visits Oren's dental clinic and pretends to be a patient. At that time, Oren was busy treating one of his patients. Oren seemed to be busy torturing his patient until it was Seymour's turn. Surprisingly, Oren wore a strange gas mask. That's when Seymour pulled out his gun and attempted to kill Oren. But instead of being killed by the gun, Oren was out of breath because of his strange mask. He died. Seymour then dragged Oren's body to Mr. Mushnick's flower shop. The body was cut into pieces to be given to Audrey II as food. At that time, Mr. Mushnick was going to his house, which was next to the shop. Unexpectedly, he saw the shadow of Seymour, who was cutting something. Upon inspection, Mr. Mushnick was shocked to find Seymour cutting Oren's body into small pieces. Mr. Mushnick immediately fled in fright. After mutilating Oren's body, Seymour then gave it as food for Audrey II. The plant looked very voraciously eating Oren's body parts. As the days passed, Seymour became terrified at what he had done. He even panicked when he saw Audrey approached by 2 policemen. The police are looking for the whereabouts of Oren because he suddenly disappeared. That's when Audrey said that she really couldn't stand dating Oren anymore. She was often abused and she wanted to be separated from him. Seymour finally persuaded Audrey and said that he liked Audrey. Both of them then kissed. That afternoon Seymour decided to go home and rest in his room. Unexpectedly, Mr. Mushnick came and said that he knew what Seymour had done to Oren. Seymour was terrified of being threatened by Mr. Mushnick. He was also asked to report to the police for his actions immediately. But while in his shop, Mr. Mushnick suddenly changed his mind. He wanted to take care of Audrey II, while Seymour could go out of town to be free from the bondage of the law. Unfortunately, Audrey II didn't like the old man at all. Unexpectedly, the plant immediately grabbed Mr. Mushnick and ate him alive. A few days later, Seymour became even more famous thanks to Audrey II. He was visited by many TV and radio stations to be interviewed. Everyone even tried their best to enter the flower shop because they wanted to see the plant up close. Meanwhile, Audrey II's size grew bigger and almost filled the entire shop. While being interviewed by a TV station, Audrey II suddenly withered again. That's when Seymour became confused about how to feed it. He then chased away all the reporters and bystanders. Behind the shop, Audrey caught up with Seymour. That's when Seymour pitched his idea of escaping with Audrey out of town. They can use the money they get from the TV and radio stations that have paid for the interviews. Audrey was so happy hearing that. Now they can start a new life together. That night, in silence, Seymour tried to escape and leave the withered Audrey II behind. But the plant immediately rose again and asked Seymour to look for food. Confused about getting meat, Seymour decided to look for animal meat and gave it to Audrey II. At the same time, Audrey, who was across the shop, saw the plant moving. When she entered the shop, that was the first time Audrey saw that the plant could talk like a human. But Audrey did not think that the plant would attract her and instead tried to eat her alive. Luckily Seymour arrived just in time and he tried his best to get Audrey out of Audrey II's clutches. With all his might, Seymour finally managed to get Audrey's out. Unfortunately, even though she's been taken out, Audrey had to die from being exposed to poison from Audrey II. That fact makes Seymour so sad, especially since Audrey is the only woman he loves. With a heavy heart, he finally let Audrey be Audrey II's meal. After that, Seymour ran out of the shop and left aimlessly. He climbs to the top of the building and decides to kill himself. But to his surprise, a reporter named Patrick suddenly appeared and brought a small plant that looked similar to Audrey II. Who would have thought? Patrick secretly took some parts of Audrey II's body while interviewing Seymour. From that part of Audrey II's body, Patrick managed to grow the plant in his house. Patrick said if he would produce the plant in large quantities and would earn a lot of money. At that moment, Seymour knew that his sight of Audrey II was the stupidest decision he had ever made. He ran back to his shop and met the plant. By that time, Audrey II had grown bigger and bigger and brought out many children from the roots. Seymour had no idea that Audrey II would pull him into its mouth and eat him alive. Some time passed, Patrick's breeding plants are now sold freely in stores. People were fighting to buy the plants. Unfortunately, no one is aware of the dangers behind the plant. And sure enough, the plague of man-eating plants instantly swept through the city. Everyone is now falling prey to the man-eating plant. The towns were destroyed and everyone panicked and tried to save themselves. Finally, the plant manages to take over the city and the film ends.